Hey, everybody. Welcome. Glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. We are in some exciting times, and it's amazing to hear how quickly world events can change. World events just rapidly change, and things are developing very quickly. I'm obviously going to talk about that tonight. First will be the opening remarks, then will be the roll call. Then during the roll call, I call you all as I see you, names and locations. Then from there, I answer your questions. So if you have any questions for the second half of the show, you can send them as Rumble rants on the Rumble. We are live on the Rumble. Or you can send them to Cash App. You can Cash App Caleb Maupin 22 and send your questions. If you aren't able to fit the questions into the Cash App subject line, you can follow up and I can just read them from the regular chat. That's fine. But that's the way we do things here. You know, we are in certainly strange times, but we're doing the best we can. And things are certainly developing in an interesting way. So yeah, if you want to send me questions for the second half of the show, we'll talk. And we'll just talk about where things are at. As far as announcements, join the Center for Political Innovation. No organization has done more than CPI to advocate peace with Russia, peace with China, oppose the imperialist system. And of course, I'll be getting into that later tonight. So we're going to follow our normal format. And then after that, we will from there, at that point, from there, we will answer questions for the second half. So, what can I say? What more is there to say? That's just kind of where things stand. We're just going to go right into things, as we always do. And I'm just looking for different things I can show. But there we go. All right. Alrighty. So the big news is that Trump and Putin are meeting, and it appears that they are not meeting just to shake hands or just for a photo op. They are meeting for the purpose of signing an agreement. That is what has been reported. I do have an update from the ground. This is an Irish reporter who is in Britain. He's in Moscow, he's in Moscow, but he's an Irish citizen who reports for RT, and he made this video kind of giving his update on where things are at.
So hey everybody, another update. Of course, the rumor mill is aflame here in Moscow, as it is in Washington and elsewhere, about what exactly has gone on behind the scenes and what happened at Witkoff's meeting with Trump or with Putin, and what is the basic rationale for these two men to meet. Two things that are interesting, pointed out by Brian MacDonald, that Peskov has consistently said there's no point in Putin and Trump meeting unless there's something to meet about. So in the aftermath of the Witkoff meeting, and obviously the channels that were open prior and leading up to the meeting, we have to maybe consider the fact that a framework of a deal has already been done. That is what I've heard from several people, sources who I respect, who may know. Of course, no official agreement on what that deal would mean. I've spoken on air today about the idea that territory, it's all about territory. I think Marco Rubio agrees that it's all about territory. So I'm not going to posit my view on that. I think Russia will not give any territory back that it has taken, very costly. Crimea would have to be recognized. There'd have to be economic relief, sanctions relief, normalization. And I suppose the big picture and the big fish is normalization of relations between Moscow and Washington. Because people forget that that is the big issue here in Russia, as much as it is in the United States. So it's getting very interesting. Is Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin going to meet to essentially rubber stamp a deal that already exists, or the framework, the bones of a deal that already exists? Why would they meet otherwise? That's one of the positions here. So we'll keep you updated as the day goes on. We hope to find out exactly where this will happen, this meeting. But remember, the top man from the UAE is in Moscow today as well, talking to President Putin. Nothing happens by accident, as I always say, as the workmen behind me decide to do their thing. Okay, I'll talk to you all soon. Watch this space.
Yeah, so we're just waiting to see what happens. It's certainly a big development. And I did a stream on Monday, and I said, could the war in Ukraine actually end soon? And it looks like I might have been onto something. We shall see. I am a bit shocked. I'm a little bit, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights. I can only hope that the meeting, which I guess rumors are the meeting is going to take place in the United Arab Emirates. I'm just hoping that this meeting goes smoothly, that an agreement that is acceptable to both parties is reached, and that we back further away from World War III, and that people stop dying on the fields of Ukraine. That's what I would like to see happen. Obviously, I assume that everyone watching shares those sentiments with me, but we'll just have to see. And I mean, I've heard September is very key, and I've heard other things are in the works. I'm not thrilled about what Pam Bondi did today. More anti-Maduro nonsense. I'm certainly not thrilled about that, upping the bounty against the great leader of Venezuela, who I admire. That's obviously, disappointing. And the Trump administration's behavior with regards to the Middle East has been erratic and inconsistent, and mostly bad. There were a few good things, pulling the U.S. Aircraft carrier out of the Red Sea, and there were a few good things. But overall, I don't quite know what to make. I do know that the big picture is, as we understand it, Russia and China rising, the Western countries falling, and chaos and instability spreading throughout the Western world, and the BRICS countries rising. That's the situation that we're in the world. And the question is, how is the West going to continue to deal with it? The general policy of the West has been to do everything they can to fight against the countries that are rising up from poverty and are not under their dominion. And that has been, pushing Russia into this war in Ukraine. That has been sanctions on Iran, bombing Iran. That has been coup attempt after coup attempt and sanctions to crush Venezuela. That has been the funding of extremist organizations across the African continent, religious fanatics in the Middle East, Wahhabis and others. They're trying to hold off the new world from emerging. and the new world just continues to emerge. And the BRICS countries are much more stable, and the BRICS countries are raising people up out of poverty with an economy that is based on real solid growth and physical economy, not derivative ripoff schemes and fictitious capital. And that the problem that is overall facing the Western world is this problem of technology. It's the problem of artificial intelligence. It's the problem of capitalism being a system where the means of production only function as preliminary transformation into capital, where profits are in command and human labor power is decreasing. This is all the objective laws of history playing out. And there's a big section of the world that is no longer restrained by the chaos of the market or the anarchy of production. And because of that, they are continuing to rise. And the Western leaders very much have the scarcity mindset that if the world continues to rise, they'll stop being at the top forever. And if they're going to stop being at the top forever, why, that's unacceptable because they must rule, they must have dominance. And so they intend to wage wars and try to stop growth around the world and keep countries in the chains of poverty so that they can stay at the top. That's what imperialism is. And that the globalist imperialist system that is trying to keep the world poor and make it poorer so that Wall Street and London can stay rich, that system is in a severe crisis, and that it would be in the overall interest of the bulk of the people in the United States, in Britain, in France and Germany, in the Western countries, if they saw their country break out of that system and start building and constructing and join the new world based on growth. And that's the premise on which the Center for Political Innovation has been established. Our organization is a pro-growth, optimistic movement that wants a government of action that'll fight for working families and that opposes globalism and imperialism out of love for our people, for our country, for our homeland. And that we don't want to be degrown to save their system. Rather, we want the country restructured to embrace the new world of growth and innovation that's rising around us. And that we know that the road to getting a government of action that fights for working families is the creation of an anti-monopoly coalition of lower-level capitalists who are pro-growth, of working families that want economic growth, of the forces around the world that are opposing and in opposition to the Western financial system that also want growth, and that a pro-growth, pro-humanity, anti-monopoly coalition must be created. And ultimately, we're going to need a state that will facilitate growth, that is a government that invests in communities and people and controls the banks, factories, and industries in order to do so. We're going to need central planning. We're going to need the banks, factories, and industries to be rationally organized. And, on the CPI website, we have a 4-point plan that lays out how that might happen. And our 4-point plan includes a national bank, a mass program to hire the unemployed, to rebuild the country. It includes an economic bill of rights. It includes public ownership of natural resources. All of those things are included in our 4-point plan that would restructure the United States to be a government of action that fights for working families and is building and constructing. And that puts us at odds with the big energy monopolies, with the big bankers, with the weapons manufacturers, with the bulk of the U.S. state apparatus, and that we need to build a coalition of people who want to see growth and expansion and development in their communities. That's ultimately what we're aiming to build, and that we've taken this anti-imperialist message everywhere we possibly can. We have gone far and wide with our pro-growth, pro-working families message. And, the fact that President Putin might very soon be meeting with President Trump, and we might be seeing an end to the war. I will say there's no other organization in America that has done more to help make that happen than the Center for Political Innovation. And actually, last night I showed a video of our work, and that video was actually very limited. It didn't include quite a bit of the work that we've done. So this is a video of everything we have done since the special military operation happened. Not everything, but a lot of the work that we have done to advocate peace. Nonstop action from the Center for Political Innovation to raise the issue of peace with Russia and ending this war. This is just an overview of what we have done for the last 3 years to try and stop this war and get the United States on better terms with Russia.
Russia is not our enemy. Russia is not our enemy. Russia is not our enemy.
The energy revenue to rebuild the industries of Russia, and he made Russia once again a strong economy. And that is why U.S. media demonizes Russia. That is why the U.S. government toppled the government of Ukraine in 2014 with the Euro-Maiden coup and installed a fanatically anti-Russian regime in Kiev. You know, I saw a CNN reporter claim that Ukraine was a peaceful country until now. Well, this is the monument in Donbass to all the children who have died of the shelling and the bombing being carried out by the U.S.-backed regime in Kiev. 14,000 plus people dead, children who have died. It hasn't been a peaceful country. The people of Donbass have been subject to 8 years of bombing, 8 years of shelling, 8 years of a food blockade, and Russia is now moving in to protect them and bring an end to this. The Wall Street money sharks hate Russia. They hate China, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and many other countries because they have governments that stand up to the international bankers and their monopolistic corporations.
And it's not a good situation. People are dying and it needs to end. And we need there to be a negotiation. We want there to be peace in Ukraine, and that means that our leaders sit down and negotiate. It doesn't mean that Boris Johnson gets on the phone and wrecks a peace deal just because he wants people to keep dying. Global food crisis spawned by a war. That's right. Russia is not our enemy. 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 Russia was with us in the fight against the Nazis in World War II. At the moments when America shows its true colors and is standing up for justice and truth, you'll notice that we're standing with Russia.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. It's time to stand for peace here at the United Nations. We are marching up to the religious rally. Russia and China are not our enemy. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. 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 Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia. Peace with China. Peace with Russia.
Youth festivals are very, very important to my organization in particular, the Center for Political Innovation. Every meeting that we have, we begin with the pledge. We've changed the word youth for people because we have people of all ages, but we begin, we raise our right hands, we pledge that we shall remember this unity forged at the end of the Second World War, not only today, not only this year, this week, but always, and the pledge goes on. But that is such a beautiful pledge that came out of the World Democratic Youth Federation. And I must say that the youth festivals represent the best, not just of this country, but of America. A time when we stood in solidarity with Russia to defeat fascism. And they're trying to erase that from American history.
I'm Caleb Maupin, the chair of the U.S. delegation, and he also represents the Center for Political Innovation.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Caleb Maupin. I'm the founder of the Center for Political Innovation. And in October, I was deeply honored when the youth office of the Russian Foreign Ministry reached out to me about forming a national preparatory committee for the upcoming World Youth Festival, set for March in Russia. As someone who attended the World Festival of Youth and Students in 2013 in Quito, Ecuador, someone who attended the festival that was held in Sochi in 2017, as an advocate of socialism, peace, and international cooperation, as an American patriot,
As a Christian and someone who strives to live according to the teachings of Jesus Christ, I considered this to be a great opportunity. However, it is the circumstances of our upcoming trip that bring us here today. As we meet here today, Jesse Neville, Penny Hess, and Omali Yeshitela have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. They are facing a possible 15 years in prison. Their trial date was just set for September. The Biden administration has charged them for doing what we are about to do, for going to an international conference in Russia. I'm the leader of the United States delegation. I'm representing the Center for Political Innovation. And I would like to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that dynamic interview you gave to Tucker Carlson, in which you showed many, many young Americans a different kind of leadership, because our politicians and our leaders in the United States, they speak in sound bites, they speak in terms of scandal and gossip, but you presented a long-term vision, a scientific view of statecraft, and by getting through to young Americans, you made a difference. Many people who would never have listened to anything you had to say or heard another perspective heard you because of that interview. Now, getting to my question, things between our two countries are not good at this point. You know, before we left, we had to have a press conference at the United Nations. We are concerned about being prosecuted. There are 3 Americans that have already been charged and are facing prosecution, possibly 15 years in prison, simply because they attended a conference like this in Russia, the Uhuru movement, they're called. And we are concerned because I know that I speak for the majority of the American people when I say that we do not want our tax money dumped into this conflict in Ukraine any longer. We do not want our country to continue to deteriorate internally while our leaders waste money on prolonging this war. I'm frightened by what the Biden administration is doing, not just in Ukraine, but also on Taiwan and on the Korean Peninsula. And I really do see gatherings like this as a potential road to peace. And what I have seen at this festival has blown my mind. The amount of young volunteers that you have here, people who have stepped up, who love their country and want to just come forward and put together dynamic events like this. What kind of role can events like this and young diplomacy activities like this play in helping set the stage for maybe changing the dangerous direction our leaders in the United States are taking things against the majority of the wishes of the majority of the people of our country? Thank you.
The United States of America is a huge and unique country. In its own way, over 300 years, in just 300 years, which is a small period of time compared to our history, but thanks to the talents of the Americans, it became a superpower, which is an obvious fact. We know outstanding American politicians, we know outstanding American business people, cultural activists, which is an obvious fact. We used to be allies during 2 world wars as we fought Nazism and fascism. What happened recently? After the war, after the alliance, the United States and the Soviet Union started dividing the world, and they did so successfully. And based on this balance of powers, they created international relations and created the modern system of international law. Then the Soviet Union ceased to exist for a number of reasons. I will not go into detail, but they were mainly internal reasons. There is one superpower remaining, represented by your country. The way your elites use this monopoly to global domination is dubious. In my opinion, the United States failed to bear this burden of responsibility that they happen to bear. They created monopoly, strengthened it. I don't mean the American people, I mean the ruling elites. While strengthening their monopoly, they soon faced a situation where the overwhelming majority of countries disliked it. And step by step, it became obvious to everyone that there is resistance to the forming global order.
All right, so we're here at Trump Tower.
They told you these people are horrible. They told you these people are terrible, that they will never do anything good for us. There's a reason for that. It's called money. It's called power. They want to weaken you mentally. They want to capture your spirit, stomp you out, and tell you, why bother? Why get out of bed in the morning? Why do anything worthwhile? No.
Great again. This was a great moment when Trump talked to Kim Jong-un and started the process of peace on the Korean Peninsula. And we want to see peace not just with North Korea, but with Russia, with China, with many countries around the world. It is outrageous that billions of dollars is being spent on prolonging the war in Ukraine when our people can't get relief in North Carolina. People are left behind in Georgia and North Carolina. They can't get any relief they need. This is outrageous. Our government is more concerned with waging wars around the world than for caring for our own people. And we need a president who will put America first, a president who will bring peace around the world. Only peace can make America.
Big crowd of people. Huge crowd of people here to support Donald Trump, pouring in to watch the inauguration ceremony in the Capital One Arena. Set up here and over there. How you feeling? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. It was fun to pass out pamphlets at the hotel there. Everybody was asking for more.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We need to heal America as well. We need to pray for America. We need to make our country great again. We need to take over. The people need to take over to make our country better again. And I hope Trump can help us with that.
Donald Trump for one of the greatest moments of his first presidency, when he went to a country that America has technically been at war with since the 1950s and gave peace a chance. We want to make peace around the world.
We're here in front of the Spoon Bridge in Minneapolis to support peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. We have confronted our government multiple times.
We don't need this war. You know, we might not agree everything what Trump is doing, but we need peace. I don't want my child to be going in a war that's not ours. Our tax dollars not coming in our country. You know, the infrastructure is crappy. There's holes all over Chicago. You know,
A few people walking by, they look at the banner and they're trying to figure out if we're on the red team or the blue team, and they can't quite figure it out. Well, we're not on any team. We're on the team of the American working families. We're on the team of the American people. We're on the peace team. That's what team we're on.
Talks between Trump and Putin are the most important thing in the world right now. Way more important than anything these stupid rallies have been demanding. Hands off this, hands off that. We need hands off the thermonuclear button.
People have been very excited to hear something that isn't directly partisan, but rather demanding things that they need and want as people. It seems to me like people are very receptive of a message that is less oriented towards telling them which team to vote for.
Hands off the button. Hands off the button. Peace with Russia, no war with Iran. Peace with Russia, no war with Iran. Peace with Russia, no war with Iran. Hands off the button.
Take it down. Yeah, we have done it relentlessly. We have been out there with the message. We did just have our national convention in Chicago, which was fun. It was great, pretty well attended. I mean, I guess I can just show you what that looked like. Yeah, if maybe I'll pull up yeah, I can pull up the video of that. But our organization, we are a group that has been working relentlessly to advocate for peace. And the speeches from our convention is coming out. And I mean, we have actually been doing it. there's a lot of people that love to talk on the internet, and there's a lot of great podcasts going on that you can learn a lot from. But for us, it's about getting to the people who would never go looking for this message, getting to them and advocating this message. So I do want to just show you some of the other stuff that we've been doing. You know, if I can just pull up some video here for you. Yeah, let me see if I can pull up some video just to give you a sense of what we've been doing. And I guess from there, do I have video to show you? Yeah, again, I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights, a little bit, because I really, really hope that this war will end. I really, really hope that U.S.-Russia relations get better. And I also, I've been in this spot before. It's never seemed this close before, but there's been many times where I thought things were going to move ahead and they didn't. So I am going to join Jamarl Thomas tomorrow. I'm going to be on his show tomorrow morning, so tune in for that. That should be good. And yeah, I mean, I do want to just show you some of what CPI has been doing, and then I do want to, talk about what the root of all of this is, and I do have something to read to you all tonight, about economics and about, the understanding that we have that isn't so universal and isn't so widespread. All right, here we go. This is some of the video from our convention. I also wanted to show you. So one of the highlights of the convention was that we had Russian dancers perform. That was pretty cool. So yeah, before I start reading to you all, I will actually show you the Russian dancers, because they were very, very cool. They were very, very awesome. It was really, really neat that we could have the the Russian dancers perform. If you go, all this video is on the channel for those of you who haven't seen it. It's all there. But yeah, nice editing, Caleb. Well, thank you. I've still got plenty to edit. We got a lot more. We got about 4 more speeches that need to be uploaded, or 5, I think. And then on top of that, and on top of that, in addition to that, we've then got quite a bit of the Q&A session that still needs to be done. And then we've got some other surrounding activities. We've already got the video up of the rally that we did to support Ibrahim Traore. And I mean, we did a lot, and I'm still going through it all, still editing video. Gavin's talk was the latest. Noah's talk is already up there. We just put the text of it on the website. But yeah, I do want to show you the Russian dancers from the convention. We'll do that. I guess I'll quickly show you, we did the...
Shall never more be wasted on war. Shall never more be wasted on war. Thank you.
Now that's Briggy, by the way, leading the Pledge of Unity. And then we ended our opening ceremony this way.
Peace with Iran! Peace with Iran! Peace with Iran! Peace with Iran! Iran! Peace with 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 Iran!
So then we ended, after I gave my report on everything CPI has done, we had some Russian dancers perform. So I'll show you that as well.
And they're going to give us a dance performance. So I guess if they want to make their way up to the stage, we're going to have a dance performance, and then we'll continue with our awards ceremony. So we'll just looking for the dancers. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the Chicago Convention. That was pretty awesome. So, yeah, folks, I am waiting just as you are on bated breath to see what happens with the Trump Putin meeting. And while I'm doing that, I'm of course thinking about what it's all about. And I've done quite a bit of writing about what this whole thing is about the economic crisis that underlies all of this. That's rooted in the fundamental problems of an economic system where profits are in command. And really the understanding that separates the Center for Political Innovation from anybody else. No one seems to talk about these issues. And so I do have this very small book, not a very huge book, and it's quite cheap too. AI is not the problem, technology and economic crisis. And I'm going to read it to you. So yeah, if you all want to send any questions you've got for the second half of the show, I'm just going to read you this whole book, and then I'm going to answer any questions that you all have. So yeah, think of good questions to ask me for the second half of the program. And I'm just going to read this book from beginning to end, because this is what it's all about. And this explains the whole thing, capitalism, imperialism, and why, no, the problem isn't AI. The problem is much deeper than that. And the problem is the economic system that we have. So this is AI is not the problem, technology and economic crisis. Imagine self-driving cars. We've been told this great technological achievement is not very far in the future. Soon, driving may be a thing of the past, and artificial intelligence, computer sensors, and other innovations may be applied in a way that makes automobile transportation completely automated. In a rational society, this would be a cause for nothing but celebration. The amount of human labor that goes into driving could be expended elsewhere. We could move to a higher level of material abundance with one form of human labor no longer necessary. We do not live in a rational society. We live in a society governed by money and profits. And in our highly irrational, market-centered economy, self-driving cars would be a complete nightmare. It is a nightmare that is already hanging over us. As Andrew Yang told the New York Times, quote, "All you need is self-driving cars to destabilize society. We're going to have 1 million truck drivers out of work who are 94% male with an average level of education of high school or 1 year of college. We have 5 to 10 years before truckers lose their jobs and all hell breaks loose." In the society we live in, this high-tech 21st century for-profit American economy, human beings live by selling their labor power to a boss. If someone is unable to sell their labor power, they are rendered unemployed, and it becomes very difficult to feed, house, and clothe themselves. Even in the good old days of the 1950s, when the U.S. economy was booming, you still had lots of hungry stomachs in Appalachia, the rural South, and impoverished urban centers. Despite its once big, prosperous middle class, America has always had an underclass of those who often populate the prisons and the lower ranks of the military. Among this permanent underclass, there's always been a significant overrepresentation of African Americans, Chicanos, and people of color, though there have been plenty of white people in it as well. The existence of this permanent layer of impoverished workers is something that U.S. media has aimed to cover up. It is a strong argument against the image the U.S. elite seeks to present of a land of unending prosperity. However, these are not normal times in America. The conditions that have always been present for some are now expanding to the bulk of the population. 60% of American workers are living paycheck to paycheck. Food banks are overwhelmed with demand. The percentage of children living in households deemed to be food insecure by the U.S. Department of Agriculture has risen. The suicide rate and deaths from alcohol poisoning and drug overdoses are rising. The infrastructure of the United States, from the power plants to the water treatment facilities to the roads and bridges, is falling apart. The life expectancy of Americans has decreased to the lowest point in 25 years. Though the economic crisis is the basis, there is a wider cultural and spiritual crisis that has unfolded. There is a political crisis as the elite battle each other and seek to resolve the crisis with heavy-handed force. The root of this crisis can be found in economics, and this book will put forward primarily economic solutions. The economic foundations of our society must be reinvented so that all human creativity, labor, and natural resources can be found in the vast territory of the country can be unleashed once again to create huge amounts of growth. Where do profits come from? We do not live in a society where houses are built because people need shelter. We do not live in a society where food is grown, processed, and packaged because people need to eat. We live in a society where the guiding force of production is profit. Houses are built so that landlords and banks can make money from selling or renting them. Food is produced so agribusiness corporations and big box stores can make money selling it. Apple makes iPhones, Kraft makes cheese, and other major corporations operate on the basis of maximizing profits for their shareholders. Profit is in command of production. The banks, the major media, the means of transportation, the oil wells, all the major players in our economy operate so that those who own them can get a return on their investment. This is the definition of capitalism. In our time, there's a huge amount of confusion about what exactly capitalism is. Capitalism is not a term for having money. Money existed in ancient Rome, in Greece, and in medieval Europe. China was printing paper money before Marco Polo ever visited this thriving civilization. Capitalism is not synonymous with money, and many non-capitalist societies have money. Capitalism is not synonymous with inequality either. There was inequality in feudalism. There was inequality in the slave civilizations of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. There is inequality in the socialist, non-capitalist societies that exist around the world. Capitalism, as Mao Zedong, the founder of the Chinese Revolution, put it, is defined by profits in command. Friedrich Engels defined capitalism, saying, under capitalism, the means of production only function as preliminary transformation into capital. Karl Marx wrote about the anarchy of production. Capitalism is the economic system we live under in the United States, and it is defined as production organized to make profits for private owners. As William Z. Foster, the leader of the Great Steel Strike, explained, the basic contradiction of capitalism, the source of all its weakness and its final dissolution, is found in the fact that this system does not carry on production for the benefit of society as a whole, but for the profit of a relatively small owning class. The great industries by which society must live are owned by private individuals who work ruthlessly to exploit the masses who work in these industries. Under capitalism, production is regulated not by the needs of the masses, but by whether or not the capitalist class can make a profit by such production. Commodities are not produced primarily for use, but for profit. So in a capitalist society where production is organized for the profit of private owners, how are these profits created? Where do profits come from? The truth is that profits can only come from human labor. Imagine you had a capitalist who manufactured pens. The cost of the materials to go into the pens shall be represented by A. The cost of the shipping of the pens shall be represented by B. And the labor cost of the employees he hires shall be represented by C. The final cost of the pen, which is paid to the consumer who purchases it, shall be represented by D. A plus B plus C equals D, right? A plus B plus C equals D. The cost of the pen is the combined total of the materials, the shipping, and the labor costs. But there is a problem. How can the capitalist who set this up make a profit, a return on his investment? The owner cannot change how much the materials cost. A must remain untouched. The owner cannot change how much the shipping costs. B must remain untouched. The profits that the capitalist makes can only be extracted from C, which is the value put into the pen by the labor costs from which the capitalist can extract his profits. So in order to ensure that profit is made from each pen, our equation must be corrected. A plus B plus C1 plus C2 equals D. A plus B plus C1 plus C2 equals D. C1 represents the wages the worker is actually paid. C2 represents the surplus value that is extracted by the employer as profit. This is how production is done under capitalism. And capitalism has always had a built-in problem. The cause of the boom-bust cycle in which the market goes up and down is this: C1 does not equal D. The final cost of the pen is always significantly higher than the wages paid out to the worker to produce it. If this is extrapolated throughout the entire economy, we see the problem. The wages paid out to workers who produce products are never enough to purchase the products that they produce. This is called the problem of overproduction. The worker can never buy back what he produces. The market inevitably has more products than it can sell. Karl Marx wrote about this problem of overproduction in capitalism. John Maynard Keynes, another economist, called it underconsumption. The result of overproduction is what economists call a glut. This is a situation where the market has so many goods that prices drop, businesses close down, workers lose their jobs, and the economy experiences a downturn. The problem of overproduction and gluts is a problem that only exists in capitalism. In previous societies, people were homeless because there was not enough housing. People were hungry because there was a shortage of food. But only under capitalism are people hungry because there is too much food. Only under capitalism are people homeless because there is too much housing. Capitalism creates a problem that is simply irrational, a problem of poverty amid plenty, poverty created by abundance. The more wealth that is created, the poorer people get. This is expressed by a famous dialogue labeled The Coal Miner's Riddle, which takes place between a father and a son. Father, why is it so cold? Can we turn on the stove to keep warm? Says the son. Father, no, we don't have any coal to heat the stove. Son, Father, why don't we have any coal to heat the stove and keep warm? Father, because I cannot afford it. Son, why can't you buy any coal? Father, because I've lost my job at the coal mine. I was laid off. I am now unemployed. Son, why did you lose your job at the coal mine? Father, because there is too much coal. Production for profit will always have this built-in problem of overproduction. In the U.S. state of Missouri, there is a cave where $1.4 billion In this U.S. state of Missouri, there is a cave where 1.4 billion pounds of cheese have been buried. Why does the U.S. government purchase so much cheese simply to bury it in a cave? Because this keeps the price of cheese and other dairy products from dropping. It is just one artificial mechanism among many created to deal with the problem of overproduction. The governments of the world have developed all kinds of mechanisms to attempt to abet the economic turbulence created by overproduction. The U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, the various corporate subsidies that are distributed, the military-industrial complex, the food stamps program, the huge amounts of government spending on various projects are all necessary to keep the capitalist economy churning along, despite the fact that a huge amount of the wages paid out will never be enough to purchase the products. Karl Marx wrote of this in the 1848 Communist Manifesto. He wrote, "It is enough to mention the commercial crises that by their periodical return put the existence of the entire bourgeoisie on its trial, each time more threateningly. In these crises, a great deal of the existing products, but also the previously created productive forces, are periodically destroyed. In these crises, there breaks out an epidemic that in all earlier epochs would have seemed an absurdity, the epidemic of overproduction. Society suddenly finds itself put back into a state of momentary barbarism. It appears as if a famine, a universal war of devastation, had cut off the supply of every means of subsistence. Industry and commerce have been destroyed. Why? Because there's too much civilization, too much subsistence, too much industry, and too much commerce. The productive forces at the disposal of society can no longer tend to further the development of the conditions of bourgeois property. On the contrary, they have become too powerful for these forces. And so, as they overcome these fetters, they bring disorder into the whole of bourgeois society and engender the existence of bourgeois property. The conditions of bourgeois society are too narrow to comprise the wealth created by them." Marx's close collaborator Friedrich Engels explained it this way: As a matter of fact, since 1825, when the first general crisis broke out, the whole industrial and commercial world, production and exchange among all civilized people and their more or less barbaric hangers-on are thrown out of joint about every 10 years. Commerce is at a standstill, the markets are glutted, products accumulate as the multitudinous as they are unsaleable. Hard cash disappears, credit vanishes, factories are closed. The mass of workers are in want for the means of subsistence because they have provided too much of the means of subsistence. Bankruptcy follows upon bankruptcy, execution upon execution. The stagnation lasts for years. Productive forces and products are wasted and destroyed wholesale until the accumulated mass of commodities finally filter off, more or less depreciated in value, until production and exchange gradually begin to move again. Little by little, the pace quickens. It becomes a trot. The industrial trot breaks into a canter, and the canter turns into a headlong gallop of a perfect steeplechase of industry, commerce, credit, and speculation, which finally, after breakneck leaps, ends where it began, in the ditch of a crisis, and so over and over again. Explaining the roots of the problem, Engels wrote, money, the means of circulation, becomes a hindrance to circulation. All the laws of production and circulation of commodities are turned upside down. The economic collision has reached its apogee. The mode of production is in rebellion against the mode of exchange. The whole mechanism of the capitalist mode of production breaks down under the pressure of the productive forces of its own creations. It is no longer able to turn all this mass of means of production into capital. They lie fallow, and for that very reason, the Industrial Reserve Army must lie fallow. Means of production, means of subsistence, available laborers, all the elements of production of general wealth are present in abundance, but the abundance becomes a source of distress and want, because it is the very thing that prevents the transformation of the means of production into subsistence, into capital. For in capitalist society, the means of production can only function when they have undergone preliminary transformation into capital, into the means of exploiting human labor power. The necessity of this transformation into capital, of the means of production and subsistence, stands like a ghost between these and the workers. It alone prevents the coming together of material and personal levers of production. It alone forbids the means of production to function and the workers to work and live. William Z. Foster explained it this way. Naturally, a worker getting a wage of $3 to $5 a day cannot buy back the 10 to 20 or more dollars worth of commodities that he produces. This gap between producing and buying power widens by the constant increase in the worker's productive capacity through machinery, and the speed up also by the lowering of living standards. The capitalist wastes huge masses of these stolen commodities through luxurious living, by the creation of hordes of parasitic occupations, by immense military establishment and wars. They seek to dispose of them by export and trade. But the surpluses are not exhausted by these means. There is an inevitable tendency to glut the market with unsellable commodities. Even though, as now, the millions of producers who make up the bulk of the population may actually starve and die for the want of the barest necessities of life, the market suffers from overproduction. The falling rate of profit. However, the constantly existing problem of overproduction gets worse in certain periods. The capitalist wants to sell as many products as possible, and at the same time, he wants to pay as little wages as he can. The capitalist is competing with the other capitalist. He is motivated to make the highest amount of profit by selling the most products. One of the main ways a capitalist can increase the huge amount of profit he makes by selling products is to reduce labor costs. Replacing workers with machines makes it cheaper to produce products. The fewer workers that are hired, the more profits the capitalist can make. But this also presents a new problem. Let's revisit our equation. A plus B plus C equals D. A plus B plus C1 plus C2 equals D. In our equation, C represents the value put into the product by the labor to the worker. As we can see, the profits of the capitalist is extracted by cutting into this value. The wages the worker receives are C, and the capitalist profits are represented by C2. As the capitalist reduces labor costs by replacing workers with machines, he cuts into his own profits. The cost of the machines that replaces the workers is unchanging. He can only make profits from human labor. As the percentage of D, the final cost of the product, that is input by C, human labor, goes down, C2 must also go down. The more efficient production becomes, the smaller amount of profit the capitalist can make on each product. Because the capitalist is making less and less profit per item he produces, with his rate of profit decreasing, he is incentivized to produce more and more to make up for the loss. The already existing problem of overproduction becomes compounded by this problem, which is called the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, or the falling rate of profit. With the worker being paid less and less as their place at the assembly line decreases, their ability to buy products decreases. With the capitalist seeing the rate of profit he makes on each product going down, his drive to produce and sell more and more products in order to maintain his profits increases. This all leads to a situation where the market is glutted with products that cannot be sold. The worker cannot afford to buy them, and the capitalist is driven to produce more and more than ever because the amount of profit he makes on each item has decreased. In his book, The Future is Up to Us, Nelson Peary explained, what does robotics demand? The robots demand that their production be given away because there is no value to their production. What makes a revolution absolutely inevitable is that we have a society based on the creation of value and production, which is increasingly valueless. What is value? Value is the exchange relationship between things. A cup is worth so many tape recorders, or this pair of shoes is worth so many marbles. It is the relationship between things. Thus, if one robot is producing cups and another robot is producing tape recorders, how do you equate them? If a human being makes a cup and a human being makes a tape recorder, you can equate their relationship by how much labor time went into making the cup and how much labor time went into making the tape recorder. You can establish relatively how many cups are worth how many tape recorders. But if a robot makes them, how do you then establish a value relationship between them? I don't think you can. Robots can make cars, but they cannot buy them. Since production is increasingly carried on without human labor, without creating value, such production cannot be distributed with money. Money expresses value. Expended labor time is the basis of exchange, and it is represented by money. You cannot sell them, and if you don't sell them, how are you going to distribute them? In his book, High Tech, Low Pay, the Marxist writer Sam Marcy observed the same problem. Profit does not come from machinery itself. It is from the labor of the worker. Workers produce a greater value than they receive back in wages, and it is the unpaid portion of their labor that produces surplus value. But a robot is not a worker. A robot is fixed or constant capital, which does not produce profit. As Marcy goes on to explain, the individual capitalists are driven to substitute labor-saving machinery for workers because it gives them a competitive advantage. For a certain period, the capitalist who is able to utilize the new technology and lower the unit cost of his product can actually enjoy a greater profit because the market reflects a generalized cost still based on the old technology. Eventually, however, the new technology itself becomes generalized and the rate of profit falls. The advantage to a higher composition of constant capital is always temporary. Moreover, it spurs on the destructive competition in which the equipment that could still be socially useful is made permanently obsolete. In order to compensate for the falling rate of profit, the owners are forced to increase the volume of profit. This can only be done by further increasing production. Much of the economic literature deals with the displacement of jobs as the result of the introduction of high technology, but it does not deal with the decline in the rate of profit from the long-range point of view. Technology is a double-edged weapon. Furthermore, automation does not solve the problem of capitalist contradiction that leads to economic crisis. On the contrary, it exacerbates it precisely because of the decline in the rate of profit. High technology does not produce high profits. It increases the productivity of labor, but decreases the proportion of labor used in production in relation to the amount of fixed capital. Where did the computer revolution come from? If you can understand that human labor creates all value, and how in a capitalist economy this leads to the problem of overproduction, which is then compounded by the tendency of the falling rate of profit, you can understand the crisis we are in. In 2014, many American moviegoers were entertained by a film called The Imitation Game. This was a historical drama portraying a true story about how a brilliant mathematician named Alan Turing was utilized by the British government during the Second World War to create an elaborate decoding machine. This decoding machine laid the basis for much of what has been described as the computer revolution. The film focused on the tragedy that Turing was widely unrecognized for his genius and ended up tragically committing suicide after being forced to take medication intended to cure his homosexuality. Many have noted that Apple, the symbol of one of the biggest computer corporations today, may actually have been some kind of demented inside joke about the fact that Turing committed suicide by eating an apple dipped in cyanide. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union invested in advancing computer technology. In 1970, Zbigniew Brzezinski, a Cold War strategist based at Columbia University, composed a book called Between Two Ages, America Enters the Technotronic Era. In the book, he argued that the new left of anti-war and civil rights protesters in the United States did not pose a danger of overthrowing Western capitalism. He pointed out that the various communist groups had no real base among the population, and that the rise in protests was not so much a revolutionary movement as it was a response to changes in the culture brought on by information technology. With more access to information, people in the United States and across the world were questioning old customs and habits. The way people interacted with authority and tradition was being renegotiated, and many people felt that stifled by Cold War conformity and wanted more social liberalism. Brzezinski argued that rather than fighting the new left, as the Nixon administration had done, the United States should embrace this wave of liberalism and rebellion wrought by information technology. He argued that putting the United States at the center of the information technological revolution could Americanize the world. The wave of cultural confusion and anti-authoritarianism information technology created could be utilized to sow dissent and destabilize the Soviet Union and the communist countries. With control of media, art, and culture, the United States could push its system of free market capitalism and its values of radical individualism to a position dominated to the world, a position of dominance in the world. Brzezinski went on to establish the Trilateral Commission, a think tank he directed along with Henry Kissinger. The strategy of using information technology to secure U.S. dominance became highly respected and accepted among the Council on Foreign Relations and the intelligence deep state. The so-called deep state began engaging in covert activities to ensure that the United States came out ahead in the computer revolution. Corporations like IBM, Apple, Microsoft, and eventually Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon were created due to covert, but now admitted, support from the intelligence agencies. Money from the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Department of Treasury, and other shadowy and unseen wings of the U.S. government provided loans and other forms of assistance to create what is now called Silicon Valley. California became the center of the computer revolution. The Soviet Union had its fair share of successes when it came to computer technology. The Soviet Union launched the first spacecraft, the Sputnik satellite. The Soviet Union had the first man in outer space. In 1957, Soviet engineer Leonid Ivanovich Kaprianovich patented the first mobile phone. However, the Soviet Union had begun its process of rapid industrialization in 1928, and prior to that, it had been non-industrialized and an agrarian society. The USSR simply did not have anything near the resources the United States had to invest in the computer revolution. While Western countries freely adopted Soviet technology and inventions like LED lights, the NATO countries created the Coordinating Committee for Multilateral Export Controls. The New York Times described the treaty as organized to ensure that strategic technology such as computers, machine tools, and microelectronic items could not be used for weapons or other military applications and did not fall into the hands of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union went as far as manufacturing its own home computer system in 1985, the Electronica BK0010. Regardless, the technology embargoes and lack of resources enabled the United States to sit at the center of the global technology revolution. Ironically, this victory for Western civilization was not generated by the market. If Brzezinski had not reoriented the deep state, and the intelligence apparatus had not poured resources and efforts into creating massive computer corporations, the market would never have enabled the USA to win the technology war. The very methods that Western capitalism used to win over communism involved strategic central planning and not market chaos. But regardless, we now live amid a huge leap in technology. Years ago, thousands of people worked in factories that produced books called bookbinderies. Now, a single book can be produced on command with a single person pushing a button. Short order cooks are becoming a thing of the past, along with assembly line workers of all kinds. Computers can trade stocks more effectively than humans can. Artificial intelligence and other breakthroughs are rendering human beings more and more irrelevant in the process of production. However, it is still from the wages paid out to workers that consumers derive their purchasing power. Furthermore, it is still only human labor that can generate profits for the capitalist. The built-in laws of capitalism have exploded into a long-term crisis of overproduction and falling profits. The huge monopolies that dominate the global market in the 21st century have gotten so good at producing goods that the world is now facing the greatest crisis of poverty amid plenty yet seen. The technological leaps have created a deep systemic crisis of capitalism. As Fred Goldstein explained in 2013, capitalist overproduction always caused these recessions. Production under capitalism expands very rapidly so long as there are markets. This is because of the laws of capitalist competition. The capitalists are in a permanent race to outproduce each other, to outsell each other, and to capture the markets from each other, as each wants to gain the most profit. This competition drives the system. But they fight each other by racing to lower wages, increasing production, and using technology to get rid of workers. So while production expands at a rapid pace under capitalism during a boom period, the income of the masses grows at a snail's pace, very gradually, or actually declines. Soon, the bosses find that they cannot sell their goods at a profit, so they shut down businesses and cut back workers' hours. The crisis of unemployment begins. This is the law of capitalism. It cannot operate in any other way. This is the profit system at work. This is the so-called boom and bust cycle. We say that capitalism is at a dead end because the traditional boom and bust cycle is over. There is no boom. It was the boom, or greatly increased production, that put workers back to work during past recoveries. But once the system loses the ability to bounce back and move forward and upward in production and services, a permanent crisis sets in for the workers and the oppressed. He went on, they have created a technological machine that is so productive and a low-wage workforce that is so impoverished that as soon as they increase production at a rapid rate, the system fails. People cannot buy the commodities produced. Inventories back up and no hiring goes on at all, or else layoffs take place. Capitalist productivity is strangling capitalist production. The capitalism of today, which is leading toward a more and more intense economic and social crisis, is not the capitalism of mere factory owners and wage workers. It is what Lenin called imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. It is the rule of the world by trusts, cartels, syndicates, huge monopolies based in Wall Street and in London. The Silicon Valley tech giants were preceded by the super major oil corporations and their respective houses of finance as the dominant axis within the global apparatus. As Lenin explained, the imperialist stage of capitalism is defined by financiers holding back and preventing economic development around the world in order to ensure their monopoly, carving out spheres of influence and captive markets in the colonized world. Imperialism is about holding back development throughout the world to preserve the monopoly of Western corporations tied in with big banks. While it would be normal for those who own businesses to want economic growth, the ultra-wealthy monopolists maintain their power by enacting degrowth. They want to impoverish the world and keep it poor so that they can stay on top. The people of Mexico have been growing their own food since before Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492. However, free trade policies of the North American Free Trade Agreement put an end to that. The Mexican farming sector has been eliminated. Mexico has been degrown, and Mexicans now import their food from American agribusiness corporations. More than a century ago, the British Empire burned the vast textile looms of India and forced the people who'd been weaving for centuries to import their cloth from Britain. No African country exports more oil at this time than Nigeria. The Niger Delta region is full of petroleum, one of the most vital commodities in our global economy. But the people of Nigeria live in utter poverty. The CIA World Factbook describes a life expectancy of only 60 for males and 64 for females. Only 62% of the adult population is literate. How can a country with so much natural wealth remain so impoverished? A key work by Guyanese writer and activist Walter Rodney is called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Imperialism is not about development, but keeping countries as impoverished, captive markets. The globalist nature of the 21st century capitalist economy recalls the words of British fascist Oswald Mosley, who bemoaned this emerging setup in the post-war years. The racist demagogue told his English audience in the early 1960s, quote, "Every one of us in this hall was old enough to see before the war. Every one of you knows what happened. How the financial forces in the 30s went into these backward countries, into India within the empire, into Hong Kong, into Japan, into China, and exploited these peoples to produce cheap sweated goods, which ruined the great industries of Britain and of Europe, which put Lancashire out of business in the cotton trade, Yorkshire out of business in the woolen trade, and these poor devils were exploited for a wage of a few shillings a week. For what purpose? To enable the City of London and Wall Street, New York, to make fatter profits. That is why it was done. That was the whole purpose. And all these countries who have been exploited, thrown and tossed aside by finance are now becoming the victims of communism. So finance seeks fresh fields of exploitation. Where do they turn when the old people are exhausted, when many a poor laborer has died of consumption of other horrible diseases in their sweatshops? When they've exhausted fields of exploitation, where do they turn now? New pastures, new forests, fresh virgin lands. And these poor devils are going to be sweated and exploited in Africa, just like the poor devils in China, India, and Japan. A great new field of sweatshops to be opened up, so that these new industries we are creating in Britain today can be destroyed as the old industries were, simplified, rationalized machinery with a few white surveyors and the masses of cheap-colored labor torn off the land and taken into the sweatshops to work and labor and cough their guts out with tuberculosis. Is that worthy of Britain? Is that the future of empire? And is that competition to be organized within our European brotherhood, bringing these sweat fields in Africa into our European civilization so that the financial power of one European country can be used against the financial power in another? All the great financial power of the world now shifted from the City of London to Wall Street, New York, who shall be able, on the mass of money and wealth and of power it brings to it, again and again to exert its influence in politics, until, as you see today, it is childish nonsense to say that a British government rules Britain. It's nothing to do with British government or the British people. The government of the world is the financial government, the power of money, and of money alone. During the 20th century, the Western capitalist home countries were kept stable by a labor of well-paid industrial workers who were loyal to their bosses. The aristocracy of labor was made up of working-class people who saw their living standards increase along with the ascendancy of big corporations. This bought their loyalty and made them supportive of wars and defenders of the status quo. However, in the 21st century, the aristocracy of labor is being systemically destroyed. The once prosperous industrial cities have been reduced to ghost towns dotted with empty foreclosed homes. America's once booming suburbs have become centers of opioid addiction, human trafficking, bitter, decaying elderly people, and hopeless, angry youth. As the productive economy comes to a halt amid the long-term crisis of overproduction, the primary methods of profiteering among the already rich have become what some describe as destructive accumulation, prisons for profit, military contracting, an epidemic of addiction caused by doctors being pushed to overprescribe painkillers. The public education system is being auctioned off to the highest bidder in school choice charter schools, where private corporations make money from maintaining the youth. In 27 U.S. states, municipalities have become so indebted and bankrupt that they have begun unpaving the roads, replacing paved roads with gravel and dirt roads to save money on maintenance. The physical economy of the United States lies in ruin. The system has become cannibalistic, eating itself in order to keep profits flowing in, even when very little value is being created. This state of affairs cannot continue indefinitely without some kind of big dramatic fallout or correction. We should be reminded of Karl Marx describing how crises of overproduction are resolved. Quote, how does the bourgeoisie get over these crises? On the one hand, by the enforced destruction of the mass of productive forces. On the other, by the conquest of new markets and by the thorough exploitation of old ones. That is to say, by paving the way for more extensive and more destructive crises, and by diminishing the means whereby crises are prevented. How can this crisis be solved? The resolution of the long-term economic crisis facing Western capitalist countries can be found in abolishing the system of production for profit. To put it simply, a government of action that fights for working families must mobilize the populace to enforce rational planning and control over the means of production. The economy must be reinvented in order to function according to a central plan rather than merely the short-term gain of private owners. An economy where production is no longer dictated by profit, but rather on the basis of an overall plan is called socialism. Much like the word capitalism, this term has been subjected to a huge amount of confusion. All capitalist economies have somewhat of a state sector. Capitalist societies have roads paved by the government. The U.S. Constitution mandates the creation of a postal service that is publicly owned, not accountable to an individual owner. From the time of Adam Smith, even the most ardent free marketeers understood that some level of public works and state facilitation was necessary for the market to function. It is only since the 1970s that anyone has been so confused as to see the post office, the U.S. military, or the private Federal Reserve Bank as socialism. Socialism is not synonymous with state ownership. In post-World War II Britain, almost every major industry was nationalized. This was done so they could be rebuilt at the expense of the taxpayer in order to facilitate the restoration and functioning of British imperialism, the economic dominance of British bankers on the global stage. Saudi Arabia maintains a heavily state-controlled economy, but through the government is heavily involved, the economy functions to maximize profits for the ruling family and its various cronies. Singapore also has a heavily state-run economy, but it is run to generate profits for ruling families. Socialism is also not synonymous with taxation or redistribution of wealth. This goes on to some degree or other in all capitalist societies. Societies that maintain a bigger welfare state may have higher tax rates than those that maintain a more libertarian approach, but neither is more socialist or more capitalist than the other. The Norwegian welfare states that currently face dramatic confusion amid the inflow of refugees and their alliance with NATO, anti-Russian crusades, are not socialist countries. Capitalism is production for profit, and socialism is an economy where profits are not in command. Socialism emerged in the 20th century as country after country broke free from the domination of Western imperialism and seized control of its industries and natural resources. Socialism in the 20th century involved popular governments that emerged in explosive revolutionary upsurges, mobilizing the population to industrialize, electrify, and modernize deeply impoverished countries. The notion that socialism does not work should seem laughable to anyone familiar with basic economic history. The Russian Empire was an impoverished prison house of nations with massive illiteracy, a low life expectancy, and a primitive agrarian economy when the Bolsheviks took power in 1917. By 1936, it was fully industrialized and a superpower that produced more steel than any other country on Earth and had the biggest hydroelectrical facility ever constructed at that time, the Great Dnieper Dam. The 5-year economic plan, launched under the leadership of Joseph Stalin in 1928, transformed the lives of millions of people. A huge modern educational system was created and illiteracy was wiped out. Modern universities sprung up. Great achievements in athletics and arts were carried out. The entire planet was in awe of the explosion of economic growth that socialist central planning was achieving for the once impoverished country. Writing for The Nation in 1931, Louis Fischer wrote, "The Soviet frontier is like a charmed circle which the world economic crisis cannot cross. While banks crash, while production fails, and trade languishes abroad, the Soviet Union continues in an orgy of construction and national development. The scale and speed of its progress are unprecedented." An American radio personality named Fraser Hunt, writing for the New York American in 1931, emphasized how dramatic the Soviet Union's explosion of economic growth really was. He said, "Japan, westernizing and industrializing itself 50 years ago, was doing child's play compared to what the Soviet Union is doing today. Already, almost overnight, the USSR has become an industrial country." The problems of the Soviet Union set in after the initial wave of industrialization. And during the 70s and 80s, the country was unable to adjust its socialist economic model due to changing circumstances. The inability to adjust led to a political crisis that saw the Soviet Union's demise. China, on the other hand, was able to rapidly adjust its socialist economic system, and starting in 1978, began its reform and opening up. China began speeding forward with 5-year economic plans, state-run banks and industries, and a Marxist-Leninist party in command. A report from the World Bank published on April 1st, 2022, quotes Manuel Ferro, World Bank Vice President for East Asia and Pacific, saying, "China's economy reduction story is a story of persistent growth through economic transformation." The article begins by stating, "Over the past 40 years, the number of people in China with incomes below $1.90 per day, the international poverty level as defined by the World Bank to track extreme poverty, has fallen by close to 800 million. With this, China has contributed close to 3/4 of the global reduction in the number of people living in extreme poverty. At China's current national poverty line, the number of poor fell by 770 million over the same period." The World Economic Forum published an article on September 11th, 2018, entitled "The Story of Vietnam's Economic Miracle." A mere 30 years ago, the country was the poorest in the world. The article went on, "Today, Vietnam is one of the stars of the emerging markets universe. Its economic growth of 6 to 7% rivals China, and its exports are worth as much as the total value of its GDP. Observing the source of Vietnam's strength, the World Economic Forum noted, Vietnam has invested heavily in human and physical capital, predominantly through public investments. Vietnam invested a lot in human capital and infrastructure. Facing a rapidly Growing population, it stands at 95 million today, half of whom are under 35, and up from 60 million in 1986. Vietnam made large public investments in primary education. This was necessary, as a growing population also means a growing need for jobs. But Vietnam also invested heavily in infrastructure, ensuring cheap mass access to the internet. The fourth industrial revolution is knocking on Southeast Asia's door, and having sound IT infrastructure in place is essential. Those investments paid off. Armed with the necessary infrastructure and with free market policies in place, Vietnam became a hub of foreign investment and manufacturing in Southeast Asia. Since 2010, Vietnam's GDP growth has peaked at least 5% per year, and in 2017, it peaked at 6.8%. With such rapid economic growth, the country grew from one of the poorest countries in the world to a comfortably middle-income one, whereas its GDP per capita was barely $230 in 1985. It was more than 10 times that in 2017, $2,343. Corrected for purchasing power, it stands even higher as of today at 6,000. There is certainly a role for private enterprise in a socialist economy, but profits and markets are not in control. A popular government is. The private enterprises are not free to function according to market logic, but are guided and controlled by state subsidies and oversight. The socialist economy of Nicaragua, under the leadership of the Sandinistas, has had astounding successes. Between 2005 and 2014, poverty in Nicaragua decreased by 30%, according to the Wall Street Journal. The GDP rose by 36% between 2007 and 2016. The shining success of the government, which rules under the slogan of Christianity, socialism, and solidarity, has been its micro-entrepreneurship program, which subsidizes low-income Nicaraguans to start individual businesses or worker cooperatives. The socialist government of Evo Morales in Bolivia oversaw similar explosions of growth, with the highest GDP expansion in South America for many years. A 2019 article from The Nation observes, during the Morales era, the economy has grown at twice the rate of the Latin American average. Inflation has been stable, and the government has amassed substantial savings. And an enterprising and optimistic indigenous middle class has emerged. The article described the policies through which the popular anti-imperialist government enabled this growth. Quote, Morales passed a law seizing tens of thousands of square miles of land deemed unproductive or illegally held, and redistributed it to landless peasants. He placed the natural gas, oil, telecommunications, and electronic industries under state control. And he continually raised the minimum wage, which has tripled since he entered office. Morales has dramatically increased social spending. He poured money into building roads, schools, and hospitals, and expansion of infrastructure that was particularly transformative in the countryside. And he established modest but deeply popular cash transfer programs, a universal non-contributory pension system for Bolivians over the age of 60, assistance to households with elementary school-aged children who can demonstrate that their children are attending school, and funds for pregnant women and mothers with children under the age of 2 without health insurance. The living conditions of Cubans are far superior to those of Haitians, Dominicans, and Jamaicans in terms of access to healthcare, education, and employment. The Communist Party of Cuba presides over a socialist economy and has constructed what Ban Ki-moon called the greatest medical system in the world. Socialism in Libya built the world's greatest irrigation system, the man-made river. Under Gaddafi's leadership, Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent and experienced huge amounts of economic growth. Socialism constructed the massive Aswan Dam, the biggest hydroelectrical power plant in the Middle East, which fully electrified Egypt. Ba'ath socialism brought running water, electricity, and literacy to Syria. When the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production is overcome, and economic growth is no longer restrained, Socialist central planning enables human creativity and drive to expand, no longer held back. The problems inherent in production organized for profit are overcome. The solution to the crisis in the United States can be best summarized with the slogan, "We need a government of action to fight for working families." The state must step in and control the centers of economic power, forcing production to move ahead and wealth to increase. The invisible hand must be pushed aside, and a state that enacts popular will must assert itself over production. If a government came to power in Washington, D.C., and carried out the following 4 steps, the U.S. economy would regenerate very rapidly. 1. A mass mobilization to rebuild the country. A government of action would hire millions of unemployed or underemployed people and put them to work rebuilding the country. This would mean a mobilization by the state to build new hospitals, power plants, water treatment facilities, schools, universities, high-tech research facilities, and high-speed railways. 2. Public ownership of natural resources. A government of action would institute public control over natural resources. The wealth generated from America's oil, natural gas, coal, and timber would go into the public budget rather than into the pockets of private owners. This would ensure that the state had enough resources to fund its efforts and stimulate the economy, oversee growth, and lift the burden of taxation from the population. 3. Centralization of public control of banking and credit. A government of action would centralize credit and banking into the hands of the state, lending money strategically at a state, federal, and local level. Credit would be assigned based on enacting an overall economic vision and ensuring long-term growth, rather than simply profits of private lenders. The massive debt that hangs over the U.S. economy as a curse must be canceled, and the debt industry forcibly broken up by the state. 4. An economic bill of rights. A government of action could then implement an economic bill of rights, ensuring that the population has the right to jobs, housing, education, and health care. The population would be maintained for the overall good of the country. People would be seen as assets to society, capable of creating wealth and making the country stronger. Thus, it would be in society's interest to make sure the population is healthy, well-educated, and fully utilized for the good of the country as a whole. These actions would result in a rise in wages and near elimination of unemployment. Small businesses would flourish. Regions that are struggling and stagnated would be renewed and filled with prosperity and hope. These 4 steps are quite within the reach of the U.S. government. Governments across the planet have carried out similar endeavors. However, these 4 steps would erode the private property rights of wealthy corporations. The right of private bankers to lend money at interest would be eradicated. The oil and natural gas wells, the coal mines, and other natural resources that are private property of corporations would be seized by the public. The state would become the primary employer, with an industrial and construction army being mobilized to regenerate the economy. Taxes would decrease. Private property and personal property would still exist on a massive scale. Inequality of income would certainly remain a reality. None of these steps would be a socialist nightmare as envisioned by right-wingers. In fact, they would be the opposite. These steps would result in making America great again, more effectively than anything Trump has so far put forward. A wall along the border, protectionism in the form of tariffs and renegotiated trade deals, renewed emphasis on national sovereignty against globalism, these would be almost meaningless compared to these 4 dramatic steps. In order to enact all these 4 steps, a government would need to have massive public support, and this support could not come in the form of silent approval. A well-organized and awakened public would have to back these efforts of popular leaders to enact these policies. Though it seems far off, the conditions of the United States for such a government of action to emerge are indeed ripening. Divisions among the elite are intensifying, and conditions are worsening for the broad masses. And that is my pamphlet, my book, AI is Not the Problem. Pretty basic, and it just spells out how the problem is not technology. The problem is our irrational economic system in which technology makes us poorer. And if we had a government of action that fought for working families, we could easily get the economy moving very, very rapidly once again. That's what my book is all about. Thank you for listening. This would be a great book to buy for your relatives. Give to somebody who's never heard this kind of thing before, and just Just let them hear it, right? And a lot of people think that, oh, AI is the issue. We shouldn't have an economy where great technological advancements leads to making people poorer. And so there you go. If you want to get a copy of this book, you can order it here. Order the book. There you go. Boom. Yeah, you can order the book here. Order the book. Boom. Yeah, so let's do the roll call, and then I will answer people's questions for the rest of the night. So if you have any questions, you can send me a Rumble rant or a super chat. But let's start talking. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody? Let's call it out. Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome. Mariah, North Carolina. Shout out to Mariah. Ryan in Kansas City. Names and locations. Jane in New Zealand. Jacob in Wisconsin. Names and locations. Names and locations. Alex in Brazil. Jenny in Cincinnati. 90-degree kitchen. Get an air conditioner, Kinkle. Rose in your heart. Aw. Charles in Brooklyn. Welcome, Charles. Dave in Savannah, Georgia. Gabby in Chicago. Donnie in North Carolina. Ed in Louisville. Anon in Portland. Soon to be not Anon because I just signed up for CPI. Well, that's great. We got a new member. That's awesome. Welcome. Welcome. I'll go and check your membership. That's good. Gabby is following up with new members, so Gabby will probably give you a call. There you go. There you go. Richard in Woodland. John in Chicago. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? John in Maspeth. Welcome, John in Maspeth. We got a lot of Johns tonight. That's okay. That's okay. John is a good name, right? John was a Baptist. Dan in LA area. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Richard in Woodland. How about Colima? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. But anyway, names and locations, names and locations. Kew Gardens, Checkpoint Charlie. Dan in the LA area. John McCarthy is a good guy. Yes, he is. John McCarthy is a great guy whose record of solidarity with Uhuru is unprecedented. They gave him an award for all his hard work standing with them. He came to our convention in Chicago 3 years ago, and he learned about Uhuru, and he got involved in their defense, and he joined CPI and became a member and became the liaison between CPI and Uhuru and did great work, and I love it. John is a great member. He's a great guy, very passionate, very, very passionate, very, very good guy. Yeah. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Someone is suggesting I play a North Korean song. I find that this rendition of the North Korean anthem to be very, very moving. Let me see if I can put it on here. I find it to be very, very moving. Yeah, let me put on that. I see. So how many Rumble rants we got? We got 1, 2, 3, all from Leo Messi. So send more questions if you got them. Why don't we put on my let me highlight one other thing. So the Islamic Human Rights Commission, which is based in Iran, they put out an official letter to the United Nations calling for action to end the genocide in Gaza. We as CPI were signatories of it. 204 people from many different countries signed it. Many different people: George Galloway, Tommy Sheridan, E. Michael Jones, all kinds of people signed this. And we signed it. We have signed this letter to the United Nations urging an end to the genocide in Gaza. And you read the 204 different intellectuals who signed it. It's quite interesting. Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki from Nigeria, members of the Italian parliament. It was Daniel Estulin, the writer, and I mean, it was a lot of people. I am signatory 121, but they got many, many different people. You know, Gordon Duff of Veterans Today, and Dave Cannon. You know, and I mean, so many people signed this. So many important people. All kinds of Islamic leaders, all kinds of intellectuals and writers, college professors, Tim Anderson, and Art Olivier, the libertarian candidate for president a few years back, Ajamu Baraka, the Green Party vice presidential candidate, Vijay Prashad, and I mean, it's like, look at this list. It's a really long list of people who signed it, and I'm really proud that CPI was approached to sign it and that we did sign it. You know, Center for Political Innovation, Caleb Maupin. We are signatory 121. So go and check out this important petition and send the article around. Show people that the Islamic Human Rights Commission is taking a stand. There are people calling for action against Israel's crimes against the Palestinians. Show that to folks. Let them know that we are signatories of this very, very important document from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Also, Noah, our member in Boston, you know, he gave a great speech about the Houthis in Yemen at our convention. And we just put the text of that speech on the website. And we are now in the process of fundraising. We are going to distribute this book in bulk. There's going to be a huge pro-Palestine conference in Detroit at the end of the month. And Noah is headed there with me. And we are going to distribute this book in bulk at the convention. So we're going to start raising funds for that. We're going to formally put out a call soon, like we'll create a GoFundMe, etc. We need to get this book to the convention where there will be thousands of Arab Americans. Last year's convention had 5,000. Their website says they expect at least 3,000 to attend. We need to get there to Cobo Hall in Detroit with thousands of Houthi books to distribute. And we need your help in doing so. We're going to start a GoFundMe tomorrow. If you can send me, you can cash at me, Caleb Maupin 22, if you want to support it right now. We're going to launch the GoFundMe formally very soon. You can check out Noah's great speech, which is on the CPI website. It's been posted along with the letter to the United Nations urging action to support the Palestinians. You know, it's going to be very, very good. We at CPI, we are on a move. We just had an amazing convention. We're publishing books and we're getting out there and we're getting shit done. We are doing it. We are doing it. We are doing it. We are go, 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 go. We are go, go, go. You can read about all that we've done. And wow, watch my opening speech from the convention. I go over everything we've done to raise anti-imperialism. It looks like this may bear some fruit. We may actually see an end to this war in Ukraine, which is what I'm really, really hoping for. And at this point, peace in Ukraine is very closely tied in with peace on the Korean Peninsula because, you know, North Korea and South Korea are getting closer. However, North Korea will not negotiate with the United States until the war in Ukraine ends. They're fighting in Ukraine on Russia's side. And so at this point, if we're going to see peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, we need to see the war in Ukraine end. So if we're able to see a deal signed and the war in Ukraine end, there's a very good chance that out of that, we can start to see peace talks with North Korea once again. And that would be a huge breakthrough. So in honor of that, and while I wait for you all to send more questions, I would love to see a united Korea. Me too. Me too. Tell me about it. I'm going to put on the North Korean performance, a very moving performance of the North Korean national anthem. I'm going to put that on for you. It's a very, very moving performance. So let me just put that on for you. I might play some more Korean music and then I'll start answering people's questions. So here we go. It's a beautiful, beautiful performance. I've shown it before. It's very, very emotional and moving. Put that on. This is the North Korean national anthem performed in Pyongyang. Here we go. Here we go. Absolutely love it. And I saw that multiple people in the chat want me to play this other song from Korea, which is another like, pro-growth song. Leo Messi recommended it. Kinkle recommended it. So I'm putting that one on too. Why not? I'm on a Korean music kick. Do send some questions for me to answer in the second half of the show, right? The night is young, as they say. The night is young. So this is Cholima on the Wing, right? So here we go. Cholima on the Wing. Cholima on the Wing. Cholima on the Wing. Wow. Well, there you go. There you go. That is a great song. Very high pace. I like it. I like it. So yeah, if people have questions, we've only got 3 questions so far. Rumble rants. You can send questions via Rumble rants, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. Questions can be sent either way. Yeah, we do send some more questions. Since we're on a Korea kick, well, I'm just going to show you a couple highlights from the convention that we had. So we had 3 people that we honored. We honored the Uhuru movement. We honored Angela McCurdle, the organizer of the Rage Against the War Machine protest, and we honored Reverend Milon Stevens. So I'm going to show you, this is how we honored Angela McCurdle. This is basically, I made like a little mini documentary about each person we honored before we showed them. So this is Angela McCurdle organizing the Rage Against the War Machine rally. This is how we honored her.
I mean, truly random rally on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. A rally in support of Russia, I guess, given all the Russian flags. At least a rally against the U.S. supporting Ukraine.
Ideas are great, but the reason that the Center for Political Innovation exists is to put on events like this, to give a platform to ideas we don't widely hear in the United States, to educate people about anti-imperialism and socialism. And that is why it is really an honor tonight to bring forward our guest of honor, a real hero, someone who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. To be honest, I thought I was just coming here to a reception to say hi to people, and speaking is, hopefully it's a bonus.
The Rage Against the War Machine rally that you had in February of this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but man, oh man, Angela, when I look at who co-sponsored this event, who spoke at this event, it seemed like a pro-war, pro-Russia, pro-aggression rally. Why would you have fascists and communists and mouthpieces for Russia speaking at an event like this?
We invited people from multiple political backgrounds and perspectives to come and speak as long as they were anti-war.
Nick Brana, he's the chairman of the People's Party. He's a communist. He co-chaired this thing. His Twitter feed.
He's not a communist.
His Twitter feed.
But if he was, yeah.
Angela, his Twitter feed, the past year and a half, is full of nothing but pro-Russian propaganda.
Okay.
He blames the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine up and down the street. Never once blames Russia. Never once. Garland Nixon is a mouthpiece in the U.S. for Russian state media. Caleb Maupin is a communist. He's the founder of CPI,
He is.
one of the rally's sponsors that hosted a pro-Nazi rally. I could go on. There are like 15 speakers.
Heaven forbid we take $1,000 from someone so we can have an appropriate sound system to put on our rally.
Wait a minute.
We had.
You're better than that. You let a guy like that, a pro-Russia, communist, fascist, whatever he is, speak because he gave
Maybe
you
I'll have a
$1,000.
public conversation with him. Maybe I'll have a public conversation with him to talk about communism and his views.
I'm an Irish American. I'm from a small town in Ohio. Are you Irish as well?
I am.
Yeah. I years ago, I met an Irish cop in Cleveland, and he said that he heard an expression that when an Irishman gets off the boat in a new country, the first question he asks is, does this country have a government? And if the answer is yes, he says, well, I'm against it. So I think we're both true to our heritage in our own way. We have another award to hand out, and this award is to somebody who organized what was probably the most important demonstration against war that we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, and that was the Rage Against the War Machine protest in Washington, D.C. Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party, she organized it, and you know, Angela is really amazing. She has a huge amount of patience. It takes a lot of patience to organize. It really does. And she's worked very, very hard. And at that demonstration at Rage Against the War Machine, there were Republicans, there were Democrats, Dennis Kucinich and Tulsi Gabbard and all kinds of people. And it was so important because it was people of different perspectives, a real coalition coming together to oppose war. And it was heroic, and you put up with a lot. It was quite difficult to do it, but you pulled it off. And you're going to keep doing it. We know you're going to keep doing it. So we're really honored to give you our second Innovator Award on behalf of the Center for Political Innovation. Angela McCurdle, for that really, really important demonstration. It's really an honor to have you. Thank you for taking the time to come here and be here for this event. And we look forward to hearing your perspective on things. So go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for my award very much. You guys have really treated me kindly and with respect, even though we have some different opinions about various political things. I think it's really beautiful that we can come together for peaceful foreign policy. And I just want to extend my appreciation and tremendous respect for you. I hope that you understand how sincere that is.
So go watch the rest of her speech. It was pretty awesome. And I'll show you the other award that we gave out. You know, this was Reverend Milhan Stevens. You know, I will put that one on as well. This was Reverend Milhan Stevens. Here we go.
Peace with Russia. Peace with China. 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 Peace with Russia. Peace with China.
Yes, so I like this. It's like a warm meal.
Okay.
Milhan.
Milhan. All right. All right.
And I still don't know how to pronounce the last name.
The unification of North and South Korea has not been left in the hands of politicians alone. It has to become a matter in which God can intervene. Reverend Moon is working hard day and night to have his worldwide foundation help achieve the unification of North and South Korea in accordance with the will of God and construct the ideal world.
And so when they found Jesus, like, it just went crazy. In fact, I think in Pyongyang was like, they call it the Jerusalem of the East.
And the war hawks in the United States advocated the destruction of nuclear facilities. So in other words, there are people who, they don't like peace. They don't like to make negotiations and love unconditionally. They just blow the place up. Forget denuclearization, just blow up the nukes. Who cares about all this waste of time? And that will never work. That will just breed more hatred, and it'll just create more issues. We've seen that happen time and time again. War never helps.
This is where it starts. Peace starts when we mourn the loss of the cost of our leadership, our lack of leadership, a lack of innovation, Caleb. Our lack of innovation has caused all of this. And so we should, I'm saying we should all repent.
You have the American flag and the North Korean flag. So we're honoring, we're respecting the Korean culture. You know, they're walking together here, and they put on a whole Singapore summit just to have more dialogue, more respect, more dialogue. We educated them, we helped them, and they were willing to respond.
I tell people social media isn't real, Facebook isn't real, YouTube isn't real, but what we do here, this is real. And in light of that, I'm going to give out one more award, and then we'll end our opening session with a dance, another dance performance from our team. They did a great job. But the next award is kind of an interesting one. It's an award that if you had gone back in my life and told me that 5-10 years ago I would be standing on the stage about to give an award to a unificationist pastor, I would have told you you were crazy. I would have said that would never have happened. Are you out of your mind? But here I am. I'm here to give an award to someone I consider to be a really, really good friend, and that is Reverend Milhan Stevens. If you see that banner, the reason that banner was mentioned in New Yorker magazine, and the reason that banner was outside of Madison Square Garden, that's because of this guy, Reverend Milhan Stevens. He couldn't even be there. He was at his daughter's birthday party that day. But we found out that Trump was coming to Madison Square Garden, and he was going to be there, and we thought we have to get this message there. And so we got it there. And it was amazing. Church was letting out, and he had to go to his daughter's birthday party, but he said to everybody, if you really want to help get the message of peace out there, let's get this banner out there. And it's because of him that this banner was mentioned in New Yorker magazine. Thousands and thousands, I think there was like 25,000 people at the Trump rally. At least, half of them walked by this banner and saw this message because of Reverend Milhan Stevens and because of the support that he gave us. And it's interesting. We have an award for you, obviously. We have the Innovator Award, this nice glass award for you. I hope you put it on your mantle or something. But we really wanted to give him a medal. It didn't work out. We weren't able to give him a medal. But the reason we wanted to give him a medal is because the founder of his church, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, he was a staunch anti-communist. He was tortured in North Korea, he fled North Korea, etc. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon went to North Korea and he forgave Kim Il-sung. And he actually hugged the man who'd thrown him in prison and tortured him. And, you know, if you see those pictures of a man who was tortured in North Korean prison hugging the leader because he wanted his nation to come back together, he wanted to see peace and reconciliation. And it wasn't just a hug, it was investment. It was, you know, millions of dollars invested, building a state-run car company and really just expanding, and a country that's been isolated by war, helping them establish ties. And before the Reverend Sun Myung Moon died, North Korea gave Reverend Sun Myung Moon one of the highest medals that they have, which is the Reunification Medal. Now, I'm not here to represent North Korea, so we don't have a North Korean reunification medal to give Milhan, but we're giving you the Innovator Award. It's our version, our way of saying thank you to a movement that is all over the world and has really worked for world peace in ways that, you know, are not always popular and are kind of surprising sometimes. The world is unpredictable, and, you know, just knowing Milhan is a really good person. And, you know, he's a father, he's a pastor, and the amount of compassion that he has, the amount of patience that he has, the way he really believes and practices what he preaches. It's really an honor to know you, Reverend Milhan, and I'm really honored that you're here, and we're looking forward to your remarks. So thank you for being here, and give us some words. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, CPI. Dare to struggle? Dare to struggle? Amen. I feel like this award I have yet to earn, but I will receive it on behalf of the Family Federation and just as a pastor, born and raised into a church that's connected all over the world and has been unpopularly fighting for peace. And we have some of my colleagues here today from the Universal Peace Federation, also founded by Father Moon and Mother Han. Give them a hand over here, just hello. Yeah, the Universal. We work with the United Nations, we do all kinds of work, you know, and we have to sometimes work behind the scenes. And we've done a lot of unpopular things, so we're not a stranger to persecution, and which has happened to be the way I met with Caleb from the beginning. And this, you know, there's two things I love about CPI, and one is that you have great analogies, and this one that Caleb mentioned on YouTube was kind of knowing our place. What can we actually do to make a change in the world? And he described this boulder coming down. And it's ugly, and it's destructive.
All right. So go and watch the rest of that speech. It was a great speech that Reverend Milhan gave. So yeah, I still want to answer people's questions. We're still waiting for people to send questions. You can send questions as Rumble Rants, or you can send questions. You can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. I'll take questions either way. And so my last thing I'll play while we're waiting for questions to come in is I'm going to play another song. This is a song about the Korean homeland, another Korean song. This is a unificationist song called Shining Fatherland. It's about the Korean homeland. And yeah, and then after that, I'll answer questions. So there we go.
From the fatherland.
All right. Okay, so now I will start answering questions, and we've got 3 Rumble rants that have come in. You said something was FDI approved for COVID. FDI debunked that. I didn't say anything about any FDA, Leo Messi. I mean, I've seen the reports that it actually works and stuff, and I didn't say anything about the FDA. I did not. Please do not get me wrong. I did not say anything about the FDA. Yeah, I did not say anything about the FDA, Leo Messi. You can go roll back. I did not say anything about the FDA. You know, whatever the FDA says is from the FDA. That's not what I said. All right. Hempcar says, read the paragraph ending in more questions than answers. Ivermectin helped with COVID and they cut the study. And then he links the clinical trials. Okay. All right. Well, very good. I'm not here giving medical advice. I'm not a doctor. And then we only have 3. And then the last Rumble rant is, why does Soros fund DA campaigns? How did Russia reduce crime in the 2000s? 90s Russia makes Oak Park look like Disneyland. Okay. Well, first of all, why does Soros fund DAs? For a very, very obvious reason. DAs have a lot of power because DAs decide what cases to prosecute. Now, obviously, there are some cases where, if somebody does a mass shooting or, somebody, puts a bomb in the subway or, whatever, obviously the DA, is going to prosecute that. If they don't, that would look very odd. But a lot of what gets prosecuted is very, very political, right? There's a book called 3 Felonies a Day that talks about how every professional in America commits 3 felonies a day. 3 felonies a day. And the reason that every professional in America doesn't get prosecuted is they don't decide to go after every professional, right? At the federal level, the president, who runs the executive branch, can direct the federal prosecutors, go after this person, and any professional, they can dig deep enough and find a crime. Like what they did with Trump, right? They found irregularities in his business records, right? And they alleged that possibly this money was to pay off somebody, but it's not a felony in New York to falsify business records, right? But they alleged he had falsified business records in the process of committing a felony. That way it could be a felony. They never named what that felony was or proved he had committed a felony. The whole thing was very, very big, but they just, if you dig into anyone's business records, if you dig into anyone's taxes or anything, you can find a felony. And so the president has the ability to tell the executive branch, go after somebody or not. And that's generally why it's really, really important who's the prosecutor, right? The Soros prosecutors, they're liberals and they tend to, have very liberal policies. For example, in New York City, prostitution is illegal, but we have prosecutors here that say we're not prosecuting that. Right. And that's since the pandemic, the prosecutors have come in and they've just said, you know what? We're not prosecuting that. So prostitution is basically legal in New York City because of that. That's a huge amount of power. Now, I'm not as concerned about that as I am concerned about the fact that these prosecutors are very partisan. Right. And George Soros is a globalist who wants power, and he's at odds with the new right. He does not like the Brexit people in Britain and Nigel Farage. He doesn't like Marine Le Pen in France. He does not like the Alternative for Germany. He doesn't like Trump. So getting prosecutors in office who will prosecute based on what is in the interest of his overall faction, maybe having liberal policies, not prosecuting people for weed, not prosecuting sex workers, prostitutes, not prosecuting certain people, but at the same time, prosecuting Trump, prosecuting, people accused of whatever, that is a very key position, right? It's the fact, and, all this stuff about foreign meddling, right? Oh my God. Soros is not American. He's Hungarian, but he was funding prosecutor campaigns all over the country to decide who in America will get prosecuted, who will go to jail, and who doesn't. That's pretty big. Right. But again, foreign meddling. And it wasn't just that he bought ads. It wasn't that somebody hacked some emails or something. He was literally paying for the campaigns of certain prosecutors. And we're just supposed to be fine with that. but we were supposed to be mad about Russia hacking some emails. Now that didn't even happen. We find out. I mean, shows you how ridiculous the whole foreign meddling thing really is. It is completely ridiculous and selective. But yeah, George Soros, certain prosecutors got into office with his backing, and that is true. And prosecutors decide what crimes to prosecute, and they have a huge amount of power because of that, right? A huge amount of power. There are a lot of cases where somebody gets arrested, and then the DA just says, "No, drop the charges," right? And there's many cases like that. I mean, and it's very odd, right? It's a very, very odd thing. But I think somebody was telling me about a case in Florida where there was a guy who had beaten up his wife, right? And he was a wife beater or whatever. Awful guy. He'd gone to prison. And as soon as he got out, he went to his wife's home and was harassing her, and she shot him, killed him. And they never charged her because every prosecutor looked at this case and it's like, wow, the guy had just gotten out of prison for harassing her, and he just didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and no prosecutor would touch the case. Now, I mean, if law is fairly enforced, you're allowed to defend yourself, but you generally can't murder. You can't kill somebody, right? You can say, stay out of my house, get away from me. You can file a restraining order. You can call the police. You can lock your door. You can, defend yourself if they get into your home. But apparently this guy just showed up at his wife's house, his ex-wife's house, after being violent to her. He was there, and she took her gun out and blew him away. Kaboom. Well, that's a crime. You can't do that. But no prosecutors in Florida. I think it was in Florida, and the prosecutors all looked at the case and they were like, yeah, I'm not touching that. Well, that's pretty big. I mean, somebody did get killed and possibly an unlawful situation, but all the prosecutors were just like, nah, who cares? And that happens. That kind of thing happens. It's not supposed to happen, but it does happen. And that's why a prosecutor is a very, very important person. I mean, yeah. And that's why Kamala Harris jailing parents because their kids went, truant from school was really a fucked up thing to do. She made the choice to do that. There was a mother of a disabled child. Their child missed school because they were in the hospital, and the mom got dragged to jail in handcuffs because of Kamala's policies. Right? That's completely messed up. And they edited Wikipedia to try and say that Kamala Harris had never jailed anybody over that. And that wasn't true, right? Here there's a mother, the child was disabled, had to go to the hospital, missed school because they were in the hospital as a disabled person for a very serious medical reason. And their mother got handcuffed and taken to jail. Now, they obviously didn't take it any further than that, but Kamala Harris instituted this policy of if kids miss school, put their parents in handcuffs. And she bragged about it and she laughed about it, and they tried to cover that up during the campaign. And I wrote a book about it. And the day Kamala Harris became the nominee, they banned it from Amazon. And that was a huge mistake. That drew a huge amount of attention to it. But you all know that. We do our thing at CPI. We do our thing. Somebody joined tonight. The person who joined tonight, not going to say your name, not going to dox you, but thank you for joining. We appreciate. I checked the membership rolls, and you did join. So we'll be having Gabby follow up with you. Pretty cool. Yeah. Dues paying memberships. That is a good thing. There you go. I don't see any more Rumble rants. And so, we've gone for 2.5 hours, tonight. I'm going on Jamal Thomas's channel tomorrow morning. I'll be on around 9 a.m. Eastern. So tune in for that. And let's hope we get a peace deal and end this Ukraine war. And let's hope that the Palestinians get some justice. Share the letter from the United Nations, from the Islamic Human Rights Council or Commission. Please share that around. Spread the word. Get that letter around. We really do need people to know about this letter and know that the Muslim world and a lot of people all over the world are opposing the crimes against the Palestinians. So please circulate this as widely as you can. Check out the CPI website, join the Center for Political Innovation, and you know, you can always get a copy of this book. It's widely available. You can get a copy of this book. Tune in to Jamarl Thomas tomorrow. Yeah, keep an eye out. We're going to start fundraising to get this book to the Palestine conference, to the Arab Americans in Detroit that are gathering there. And yeah, I think that's it for tonight, folks. Dare to struggle, dare to win, dare to struggle, dare to win. The Center for Political Innovation is marching ahead. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. And yeah, we're doing good stuff. Come and be a part of it, or support us, or whatever you want to do. Thanks. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.